ආයුබෝවන්. So in this lesson today, we're going to have a look at test 2 in the Cambridge book 10. Okay, so Cambridge book 10, especially test 2, is going to focus on an academic reading paper. So therefore, if you're an academic student only, please watch this video. If you're a general IELTS candidate, you have a separate video to run through your reading papers. Now, before we begin discussing the answers, you should have done the paper. If you have done it, you could straight away have a look at the answers while I'm discussing. If not, please pause the video for 1 hour. Do the paper. Do all 40 questions within 1 hour and then mark the answers. So I'd like you to pause the video and then have a look at the paper, mark all the answers, and when you finish, let's discuss the questions. Alright, so I think you would have finished writing the answers. Let us have a look at the questions. So, test 2, academic paper, reading passage 1, first one 4, next one 8, 7, 1, 6, 9, and then 2. Not given, true, false, false, not given, true. And then question number 14, A, next one, D, F, D, B, D, E, A. 22 is C. 23 and 24, you can have it in either order. Books, activities, or you can have activities, books. 24, internal regulation or self-regulation. 25, emotional awareness. 26, spoon feeding. So when there are hyphenated words like this, they act like one word. It's considered as one word. Then 27 to 40, B, H, L, G, D, C, D, A, D, not given, no, yes, not given, no. So out of 40, put down your score, and remember I had a look at how much you should get to get a 6, 6.5, 7. Go through it and see how much do you have and then what is your score. Is it a 6, 6.5 or a 7 or above that? Alright, now let's start to discuss the questions. Passage 1 is about tea and the Industrial Revolution. Reading passage has 7 paragraphs A to G. Let us answer questions 1 to 7. Para A. In paragraph A, the Industrial Revolution is first mentioned. Besides, 2 questions are also raised. Why did this particular Big Bang, the world-changing birth of industry, happen in Britain? And why did it strike at the end of 18th century? So here we have 2 questions. Thanks to these questions, we know that the Industrial Revolution happened in Britain, and that was end of the 18th century. That's why the Big Bang or Bang, the world-changing birth industry happened, and this was at the end of the 18th century. So the time and place of the Industrial Revolution, so that is going to be 4. Para B. In para B, the writer mentions factors needed for the industry to take off, namely the technology and the power to drive factories, large urban populations to provide cheap labor, easy transport to move goods around, and a fluent middle class willing to buy mass-produced objects, a market-driven economy and a political system that allows this to happen. In other words, all of these factors are conditions required for industrialization. Cheap labor, easy transport, right? Willing to buy mass-produced objects, market-driven economy. So, conditions required for industrialization, the answer is definitely 8. Next one, paragraph C. Now, the main idea of para C is beer and tea. Two of the nation's favorite drinks fueled the revolution. They are important for Britain's industrial revolution. Why? Because the antiseptic properties of tannin, the active ingredient in tea, and hops in beer, plus the fact that they are both made with boiled water. Okay? This allowed urban communities to flourish at close quarters, and it goes on. So what does it mean that there were two keys to Britain's industrial revolution here? Tea and beer. Tea and beer. The two of the nation's favorite drinks fueled the revolution. So what were those? There were two factors, the two keys of Britain, which led to the Industrial Revolution. So the answer would be 7. The author argues that there was a burst in population growth. Then he lists 4 questions which were suggested as causes of this burst. So here, what is the answer? Number 1, the search for the reasons of an increase in population. Okay. So population growth means increase in population. So very clearly we know that it is the first one. Para E. McFarlane says, for a long time, the English were protected by the strong antibacterial agent in hops, which were added to help preserve the beer. But in the late 17th century, a tax was introduced on malt, the basic ingredient of beer. The poor turned to water and gin, and in 1720s the mortality rate began to rise again. Then it suddenly dropped again. This means that the English changed their drinking habits, which changed the mortality rate as well. So what happened? Because there was, a tax, high tax introduced on malt, the basic ingredient for beer, the poor people couldn't afford that drink. So they started to drink water and gin, where the mortality rate began to increase. Then after some time, suddenly it started to drop. This is because when the drinking habits changed, the mortality rate also changed. So changes in drinking habits in Britain, I would say the answer is 6. So we're having a look at paragraph F, right? Now when you have a look at that, the writer compares Britain with Japan. While both countries were developing cities about the same time and also had no sanitation, waterborne diseases, and had much looser grip on Japanese population, than those in Britain. But thanks to this comparison, right, Macfarlane found out that the history of tea in Britain provided an extraordinary coincidence of dates. So comparisons with Japan led to the answers. That is number 9. Right, para G. Macfarlane notes that although 17th century, Japan had some of the conditions of an industrial revolution. Japan had large cities, high literacy rates, and even futures market. It gave up labor-saving devices such as animals because they were afraid that they would put people out of work. So here, industrial revolution is definitely industrialization. Fear is to be afraid. Unemployment is out of work. So here, industrialization and the fear of unemployment is definitely what is being discussed here. So the answer is 2. Next one, questions 8 to 13. Do the following statements agree with the information given in reading passage 2? China's transport system was not suitable for industry in the 18th century. Okay? Let's have a look at it. China is mentioned in para B and F. China in the 18th century are referred to in para F. But it doesn't say anything about China's transportation system. So whether it was suitable or not, I don't know. So therefore, the answer is definitely not given. Question number 9. Tea and beer both helped to prevent dysentery in Britain. Okay. Now in para C, the author argues the antiseptic properties of tannin and the active ingredient in tea and hops in beer, plus the fact that both are made with boiled water, allowed urban communities to flourish at close quarters without succumbing to waterborne disease such as dysentery. Okay, if you want, Americans also say dysentery, but British say it as dysentery. Okay. The active ingredients in tea and beer prevent the British from succumbing to dysentery. So the statement is definitely true. Prevent dysenteries without succumbing. Okay. So dysentery is often when you have like a pain due to diarrhea or something. Okay. So answer here I would say is true. Tea and beer both helped to prevent dysentery in Britain. Yes, it did. 10. Roy Porter disagrees with Professor Macfarlane's findings. So disagree with Professor Macfarlane's one. Roy Porter disagree with Professor Macfarlane. At the end of para C, you can see Macfarlane's case has been strengthened by the support from notable quarters. Roy Porter recently wrote a favorable appraisal. So he disagrees is definitely wrong. He wrote a favorable answer. Therefore, the answer is false. Question number 11. After 1740, there was a reduction in the population in Britain. So after 1740, reduction population in Britain. go to para D and C. Between 1650 and 1740, the population in Britain was static, but then there was a burst in population growth. This means after 1740, there was an increase in the growth of the population in Britain, right? So after 1740, there was a reduction. Wrong. It is false because there was a clear growth. Burst means there was a growth. People in Britain used to make beer at home. So, make beer home. Beer is mentioned in para C and E. In the text, the author just mentions that the antiseptic properties of tannin, the active ingredient in tea, and hops in the beer, plus the fact that both are made from boiled water. So it does talk about it for some time, but it doesn't really have information to say whether the British used to make the beer at home or not. So we don't really know that. So the answer is not given. Right? Okay, question number 13. The tax on malt indirectly caused a rise in the death rate, right? So if you go to para E, but in the last 17th century, a tax was introduced on malt, the basic ingredient of beer. The poor turned to water and gin in the 1720s, and the mortality rate began to rise again. So this means that the introduction of tax on malt led people to turning away from beer to water and gin, which caused a rise in mortality rate. So the statement is true. Tax on malt indirectly caused a rise of death rates. Yes, it did. So I would say it is true because there was an increase in the mortality rate. Right. Questions number 14 to 17, passage 2. Gifted children and learning. Reading passage 2 has 6 paras A to F, right? You need to match them. A reference to the influence of the domestic background on the gifted child. We need to find out more information about the domestic background, right? So in para A, the author refers to the importance of home educational provision, reported verbal interaction with parents, number of books, and creative activities in their home. So domestic means home. Giftedness is related to education backup at home. So I would say the answer here is A. All right. Okay. Next one, question number 15. Reference to what can be lost if learners are given too much guidance. So reference to what can be lost if learners are given too much of guidance. Let's have a look. We need to find out some information about too much guidance. So if I go to para D, the author indicates, conversely, teachers who have a tendency to over-direct can diminish their gifted pupils. Learning autonomy. Too much dependence on the teacher risks loss of autonomy and motivation to discover. This means that too much help from teachers can cause students' autonomy and motivation can be lost. So therefore, answer is D. Question number 16. A reference to the damaging effects of anxiety, right? So reference, damaging effects, anxiety. We need to find out some information about anxiety. So if we go to para F, right, the author argues fear, for example, can limit the development of curiosity, which is a strong force for scientific advance. So there you go, answer is F. Examples of classroom techniques which favor socially disadvantaged children, right? So let's underline our keywords. Examples of classroom techniques which favor socially disadvantaged children. Let's read through. We need to find out some information about disadvantaged children. So therefore, we go to para D and go towards the end. There are quite a number of new methods which can help, such as child-initiated learning, ability peer tutoring, etc. Such practices have been found to be particularly useful for, in other words, favor, that is, right children from deprived areas. So some classroom techniques such as child-initiated learning, ability peer tutoring, etc. are very useful for socially disadvantaged children. So what is the answer here? D. It's in para D. Questions 18 to 22. Look at the following statements and the list of people below. Less time can be spent on exercises with gifted pupils who produce accurate work, right? So less time can be spent on exercises with gifted pupils who produce less accurate work. Go to para C. Shaw and Canesby say if the gifted merely think more quickly, then we only need to teach more quickly. If they merely make fewer errors, then we can shorten the practice. So, the most appropriate answer is going to be B. Question number 19. Self-reliance is a valuable tool. Self-reliance is a valuable tool that helps gifted students reach their goals. Okay, reach there should be 2 words. So if you go into para E, Simonton concludes that above a certain high level or characteristics such as independence seem to contribute more to reaching the highest levels of expertise than intellectual skills. So I think the most appropriate answer there is going to be D. Gifted children know how to channel their feelings to assist their learning. So gifted children channel their feelings to assist their learning. In the last para it states, in Buchatter's review of emotion in the learning of very high IQ and highly achieving children, she found emotion forces in harness. They were not only curious but often had a strong desire to control their environment, improve their learning efficiency, and increase their own learning resources. Therefore, the answer is going to be E. 21. The very gifted child benefits from appropriate support from close relatives, right? So, the very gifted child benefits from appropriate support from close relatives, right? From appropriate support from close relatives. Para A. A very close relationship was found when children's IQ scores were compared with their home educational provision. Okay, so you can see a clear link between the question and the para. The higher the children's IQ scores, especially IQ over 130, better the quality of their education are backed up, measured in terms of reported verbal interaction with parents, number of books and activities in their home. The researcher mentioned in this graph is, the researcher mentioned in this graph is all about Freeman. Right, so here you can see by looking at the answers, the most appropriate answer there for you is going to be E. 22. Really successful students have learned a considerable amount about their subject. So really successful students learned a considerable amount about their subjects. Go to para E. It states individuals who know a great deal a lot about specific domains will achieve at a higher level than those who do not. So the most appropriate answer is C. Okay. 23 to 26. Complete the sentences below. One study found a strong connection between children's IQ and the availability of what and what at home. Right? So connection between the children's IQ and the availability of what? Two things. Go to para A and the writer says, a very close relationship was found when children's IQ scores were compared with their home educational provision. The higher children's IQ scores, especially over 130, the better quality of their education backup measured in terms of the number of books and activities in their home. Availability of books and activities. So answer is books and activities. Question number 24. Children of average ability seem to need more direction from teachers because they do not have something. So what is that they don't have? So to find out the information about average ability children, we move into para B. The author says, there appears to be a qualitative difference in the way intellectually highly able think compared with the more average ability or older pupils, for whom external regulation by the teacher often compensates for lack of internal regulation. So children of average ability seem to need more direction from teachers because they do not have internal regulation. Because it says that teachers often compensates for lack of internal regulation. So that's what they don't have. Metacognition involves children understanding their own learning strategies as well as developing something. So metacognition involves children understanding their own learning as well as developing of something. We need to find out where this metacognition is. So I go to para B. To be at their most effective in their self-regulation, all children can be helped to identify their own ways of learning. Okay? Metacognition, which includes strategies of planning, monitoring, evaluation, and choice of what to learn. Emotional awareness is also a part of the metacognition. So children should be helped to be aware of their feelings around the area they are to be learned. So answer here is emotional awareness. Right. Question number 26. Teachers who rely on what is known as something often produce sets of impressive grades in class. Let's go to para D. Although spoon feeding can produce extremely high examination results, these are not always followed by equally impressive life successes, right? So even though you have to do everything for them, right, for them to get a higher score, spoon feeding means you do everything for them, right? To get their proper results, these are not always followed by equality impressive life successes. It doesn't always work. So the best answer, or rather the gap fill here, would be what is known as spoon feeding. Often produce sets of impressive grades in class. Passage 3, 27 to 31, we are having a look at museums of fine art and their public. Complete the summary using the list of words A to L below. 27 and 28. People go to art museums because they accept the value of seeing original work of art, but they do not go to the museums to read the original manuscripts of novels. Perhaps because the availability of novels has dependent upon something for so long, and also because with novels the something are the most important thing, right? So we have to find out what are the two answers. Let's have a look at question number 27. We find out about why people do not go to museums to read original manuscripts or novels. At the beginning of para 2, the writer says, this might be explained by the fact that the novel has evolved precisely because of technological developments that made it possible to print out huge numbers of text, whereas oil paintings have always been produced as unique objects. This means that unlike original paintings, which are unique, novels are available in such huge number that people do not want to go to museums to read original manuscripts, right? So here I think the most appropriate answer would be B. Question number 28, right? In para 2, the writer states, the reader attends mainly to the meaning of the words rather than the way they are printed. So the reader finds the meaning more important than the words. So definitely answer is H. 29 to 30. However, in historical times, artists such as Leonardo were happy to instruct 29 of them to produce copies of their work, and these days new methods of reproduction allow excellent replication of surface relief features as well as color and something else. Go to para 3. The author indicates that something goes on. In the century, artists seemed perfectly content to assign the reproduction of their creations to their workshop apprentices as regular bread and butter work. So here I think the most appropriate answer that you can put is L. So that was 29. We're going to have a look at 30. So if you go to para 3, right, it states, and today the task of reproducing pictures is an incomparably more simple. It's much more simple and reliable with reprographic techniques that allow the production of high quality prints made exactly to the original scale with faithful color values, and even with duplication of the surface relief on the paintings. So besides surface relief, features and faithful color values, new methods allow the companies made exactly to the original scale. This means that the copies have the same size of the original novel, and the answer is G. It is regrettable that museums still promote the superiority of original works of art, since this may not be in the interest of the what? So keywords are promote original works, not in the interests of which one, right? So this is in para 5. Let's have a look at it. Unfortunately, this seems to place severe limitations on the kind of experience offered to visitors, because museums still promote the special status of original work, right? So this may not be in the interest of the visitors or the public, so I think it should be D. Okay, so the answer should definitely be D. Now, as I tell you, you should have the reading passage in front of you. If not, you will be wondering what is D. Okay, so always have it in front of you. Scroll through with me. The reason is, if I put everything here, you're never going to be engaged with the lesson. So be engaging, right? It should be more student-centered learning. So I want you to take initiative while I'm teaching. Questions number 32 to 35. Choose the correct letter. A, B, C or D. The writer mentions London's National Gallery to illustrate what? Okay. So London's National Gallery, what does it illustrate? Go to para 6. The author argues that in addition, a major collection like that of London's National Gallery is housed in numerous rooms, each with dozens of works, any one of which is likely to be worth more than all the average visitor possesses. In a society that judges the personal status of the individual so much by their material worth, that is what we wear, what we drive, materialistic things, it is therefore difficult not to be impressed by one's own relative worthlessness in such an environment. This means that London's National Gallery is mentioned to illustrate the negative effect a museum can have on visitors' opinions of themselves. So therefore, the answer I would say is C. 33. The writer says that today viewers may be unwilling to criticize a work because of what reason? Go to para 7. Since these works were originally produced, they have been assigned a huge monetary value by some person or institution more powerful than themselves. Therefore, they are not willing to criticize a work because they feel their reaction is useless. Therefore, answer is D. 34. According to the writer, the displacement effect on the visitor is caused by what? Okay, so displacement effect is caused by what? Go to paragraph 8. The visitor may be struck by the strangeness of seeing such diverse paintings, drawings and sculptures brought together in an environment for which they were not originally created. So what does this mean? This means that the displacement effect is caused by the variety of works on display and the way they are arranged. Such paintings were never intended to be displayed that way, and therefore the answer is A. Question number 35. The writer says that unlike other forms of art, a painting does not do what? Go to para 9. The author says a fundamental difference between paintings and other forms is there is no prescribed time over which a painting is viewed. A picture has no clear place at which to start viewing or at which to finish. So this means that a painting does not have a specific beginning or an end, to start and end. So therefore, I would say the answer is D. Question number 36 to 40. Do the following statements agree with the views of the writer of passage 3. Art history should focus on discovering the meaning of art using a range of media. Now let's have a look at what it tells. So here the question is saying that art history should focus on discovering the meaning of art using a range of media. Let's read the paragraph. Art history is mentioned in para 10, where the writer argues that consequently the dominant critical approach becomes that of art historian, a specialized academic approach devoted to discovering the meaning of art within the cultural context of its time. So whether art history should focus on discovering the meaning of art using a range of media, we don't know. It doesn't really talk about it. Therefore, answer is not given. 37. The approach of art historians conflicts with that of art museums, right? So here art historians conflict with art museums. Go to para 10. What is this? The approach of art historians is in perfect harmony with the museums. It is in conflict means there is a difference. There is no difference. Perfect harmony means they go together. So here the answer is no. Question number 38. People should be encouraged to give their opinions openly on works of art. Okay, so give opinions openly. In the last para, the author says, the museum public, like any other audience, experience art more rewardingly when given confidence to express their views. So, yeah, people should be encouraged to give their opinions just like any other art here as well. You should encourage them to give their opinions. So, on any kind of art, people should be allowed to express their views, give their opinions. Answer is true. Question number 39. Reproductions of fine art should only be sold to the public if they are of high quality. Go to the last para and the writer says, high quality reproductions of fine art and states that the public should have access to them. But it doesn't tell them that we should sell such reproductions. Getting access is mentioned. Selling is not mentioned. Therefore, answer is not given. Question number 40, which is the last question for this paper. In the future, those with power are likely to encourage more people to enjoy art. Go to the last para. Unfortunately, that may be too much to ask from those who seek to maintain and control the art establishments, right? So if you read the last para, it shows that in future they are highly unlikely to kind of encourage people to enjoy art. So I would say the answer is no. Now here we have discussed all 40 questions. Discussing 40 questions will not help you unless you sit down and critically think about why this answer is right. Now I've given you reasons. Go through it. Why? Now some of you have the problem where I'm not giving you the Sinhala interpretation. Okay? The reason for that is IELTS does not require your Sinhala language proficiency, right? So we are trying to do an English exam, and I've taught you more or less beginner, intermediate levels using Sinhala. Here and there in the advanced level, I'm using Sinhala, but I want you to focus on understanding these passages in English, okay? Finding the answer is important. Now I tell you where the answer is. When I tell you where it is, you find it easy to locate the answer. But actually the difficult part is to locate where the information is going to be. So for that, skimming and scanning techniques, as I taught you, is important, right? You skim, you scan. It could be the same word, or it could be a similar word, or it could be giving you the similar meaning. So either way, you have to skim and scan and find out which para, where is my answer going to be, and then read through and figure out the answer. So with that, we come to the end of discussing Test 1 from Cambridge Book 10. That was for the academic candidates.